That, we didn't know about this before.
Good evening and welcome to the School Building Committee for November 27th, 2012. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Do I have any public comments from anyone? All right. We don't have a quorum as yet, so we'll pass over approving the minutes and invoices right now. There's no correspondence, so we'll get right to business. And that will bring us right to Pat and Carl. And which of you would like to go first?
I think, Carl, did you bring a PowerPoint
Sure.
presentation? I
Yeah.
think Carl was going to do a little PowerPoint presentation initially
Great.
and just take you through some of his issues.
A couple design things that we can touch on today. Let me see, I guess we can use both the screen and the boards here, but there we go. First, I want to direct your attention over here to the board, the site plan layout. One of the areas that we were taking a closer look at here as we move forward was the site plan layout in detail, because we're still trying to fine tune it in terms of the cut and fill and where we might anticipate rock ledge out there. So we're being careful and looking at where grading happens, where utility runs are. But there was also something that Carol brought up last fall when we were talking about playgrounds and outdoor play space that we thought we could improve at the same time. It has to do with the angle of the gymnasium here relative to the building. Right now, this is the previous plan, the schematic design plan. Remember here's the classroom wing, the front of the building here. The major paved play area is back here. This is a play structure. This is the kindergarten play structure. This is the bus entrance off the bus loop here. And then we had this paved play area back here, which is also the service drive to get into the kitchen and the back. And the thought was these would be the older kids here. The younger kids are here, but this obviously isn't enough for all the kids at recess. They'd be using this play here too, and they're kind of far apart. They're not well connected. You need multiple people to supervise them. So and we looked at this area here as we started thinking about how to develop it. Its primary purpose is to serve as a walkway into the bus entrance here, which is also the after-hours entrance for cafeteria and gymnasium here off of the bus loop. So it's primarily for that, but it also has some open space. It's nice for when you're in the cafeteria to look out on. There'd be a lot of glass. You can, and there are windows here in these kindergarten rooms, so they're looking out there too. So we do want some greenery there as well. But we started investigating that, and what we've come up with is an alternative plan. It shows up there, but it also shows here. I'll show it here first, and then we can. It actually rotates the gym and straightens it out here, and you can somewhat see it if I use the cursor on here, because we left the old site plan here. See the ghost of that line right there? That's where the gym used to be, and now this is where it is. Okay. So, it's the exact same volume, same size building. Nothing's changed. Yeah. We just rotated it. And so now it's in line with the cafeteria. But what it does, from the site plan point of view, it frees up all this area here to be one continuous piece of pavement right there. And it does a couple things. One, the most important, on a day-to-day basis, it now provides a whole kindergarten play area on this side of the building.
Where's the walkway into the door? Still going through there?
The walkway goes right through there. So
Okay.
It's just paved, so it still serves that purpose, very easily. It's separated from the drive with a little band of greenery there, but there'd be breaks, between the trees and the landscaped areas so that you could walk in to the main entrance there.
Would there be fencing necessarily to?
Doesn't need to be fencing. What we've done, that's the other improvement, I think. There's still a drive to get back here, but now it's completely separate,
Right.
from the playground.
They will like
that.
that.
That always made Carol nervous.
It made me nervous.
And previously, when we showed some parking spaces there, she said, "Oh no, we wouldn't allow parking there. If we're gonna have kids playing there, now we can have parking there, which will be much appreciated by the kitchen staff and the custodian on this side of the building, and it is separate from the playground. So you can still, you know, get into these spaces, you can still get into the loading and out, and the buses still queue up here, and the kids still enter through this paved area. And the actual additional bonus feature of it is that it can be dimensioned in such a way that it serves as overflow parking. So it's 60 feet wide, which is, you know, the width of a double-loaded bay of parking. So this could actually be for special events. When you want more parking closer to the building, particularly the cafeteria for an event, you know, you could drive in, and this is double-loaded parking right there, and you could enter directly in there after hours.
Now you have,
weekend.
the other side was supposed to be pervious pavement.
Yes.
Were you gonna do the same with this one too?
That's our suggestion. That's why it's colored the same way here,
So
George.
you'd have another tank over there too? Cistern?
It doesn't need to be this pervious pavement is basically just done on a bed of stone,
Not
so the
just a
water goes right
recharge?
through it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you could drive on that?
Yes.
And not
The one
damage
thing
it?
is with pervious pavement, some, you know, places do it in regular parking lots. The problem is it becomes a real maintenance issue if you put sand down, because you're filling all the pores that the water has to go through.
Mhm.
So every spring you have to vacuum out that sand in order for it to work, and that's a pain. It takes special equipment to do it, or you have to hire a special company with a vacuum that can sweep and get it out. So generally we wouldn't put it in areas that you'd use, you know, for day-to-day parking. But for playground areas, it's great. The water goes right through it, so even on a drizzly day, you could go out and play. The ground is not wet. In the summer, in the winter, the snow and ice melts faster there, so again, you can use it as a playground more times of the year. But if you were to, you know, use it as a parking lot day to day, which we, you know, don't advocate for here.
I would advocate we don't
But-
park on it at all then.
Right, but, you know, our experience has been,
It's gonna happen.
you put pavement near a building, people will park on
Right on
it
it, yeah.
eventually. And so we
Right.
might as well design it in a dimension that works, if they should choose to do that. And again, it could even work, you know, right now we show the buses here. Years from now, somebody may say, can we get those buses closer to the building? You could actually drive on here and through.
How about like outdoor basketball hoops and such? Would those go on that playground?
We put them over here because we
Okay.
envision the older kids would be the ones
Okay.
more likely to you know, use basketball hoops outdoors.
Yeah.
If we're talking about kindergartners or first graders here, and older kids here, so we show them over there, Eric, but
So
they
how-
they could go there. Either way, it's nice. I mean, there's a blank wall here of the kitchen, the back of house
Yeah.
areas to play against. Over here is a blank wall of the gym. You know, you could play against there too. Although, when you look at the volume, and I'll show you three-dimensionally, the ridge of the roof is running down the long dimension here. So this area, the reason we held the pavement away is that's where the snow is going to slide off. So we want to have a landscaped area there, no walkways there.
What would you do with the old kindergarten area near the front?
Oh, this is still a play area. That's still the play structure. That's where you have the rubber
Uh-huh.
surface, you know, and the climbing structures, that sort of thing. And that is fenced in, you know, to separate it from the roadways and things.
So you're gonna get off of the bus, and you're gonna have to walk how far? To get
This
to
is
the
the
front
same.
door?
Yeah, this is the same as it's always been. That's about 70 feet there, to from the buses through there. It's not a big deal. It's closer than they are today, actually, when they circle around in that. See if I have that.
Right, now they drop off in the
Right.
parking
By the
lot, so they have
parking
to
lot.
walk to the front
Now
door.
they
The
come
majority of
over
that walks
here.
underneath though.
They park over here, and the front door is over here. So, and you sort of have to walk around like that. So, yeah, we don't think that's an issue. You know, and there's a long
I
queuing
thought they left
distance.
them off at the
So-
door. the front
No,
door.
you know, the cars let
You
off.
got cars lined up
Yeah,
in the drop off.
yeah.
Where they
So-
really let them off is that right by the walkway on the other side of the parking lot. So they got to do that walkway, but I think the dumpsters are there and such right there to
Right.
underneath and then up and in.
So I can show you what that looks like too, three-dimensionally here. It's not, you know, a significant change, and the massing of the building is still the same, but just to zoom in on that area a little bit. We haven't redone the site plan, but it probably actually helps the massing of the building to have those two peaked
That
roofs.
break.
You know, the low side be on the side that's visible, you know, that you're looking at. It brings the massing of the building down again. You're not seeing the big gable end of the building. But otherwise, it stays the same. It also gives us the opportunity, if we look around from the other side, you see if I go around to this side here, we have more south-facing roof, too, that could have solar panels on them. These roofs here are now both facing south there. So again, you know, we're planning on having some now, but you know, in the future, if we can't afford to cover the whole thing now, there'll still be obviously the right orientation. So we think it's a nice improvement, and another bonus, we probably think it makes the project cheaper. We gotten rid of an angle. The building stayed the same size. You know, it hasn't gotten any bigger or smaller, but just the fact that it's a little more efficiently laid out in plan, all straight lines and 90-degree
You should have
corners.
started with that.
It's more economical. You know, it's pretty slight in the
Yeah,
big scheme
no.
of things. It's relatively small, and that's not our motivation here. But it is more economical from a grading point of view now too. That was one reason we turned it, was because before we were doing some filling right here. There was a hole, sort of a depression in the site. By pulling this road back, we no longer have to fill as much there, and we get, you know, a better layout for both playgrounds than in the past.
I think that providing a larger play area for the kindergarten wing is huge.
Yeah,
It's
it is.
huge.
And it makes a lot of sense.
It does.
And also, you know, there was this thing too about it's hard to recreate what happens at Pearlie now, because Pearlie's such a small school, but we constantly get that comparison when we talk to the kindergarten teachers, you know, when they think about moving over here. Well, can we do this like we do now? Can we do this like we do now? Well, one of the things they do now is they drop the kids off early, and the kids can play in a playground before, you know, entering the school. And granted, you know, this is still somewhat on the front of the building. You know, you could now envision kids hanging out here too before school if they wanted, before entering the building.
Well,
So
even at
that's
Pembroke, the kids
possible.
go out back before school.
Yeah, I
right?
guess they allow that.
They do.
Yeah.
They go around to that left side.
Yeah,
I mean, they almost all do. So I take that back. I don't know if they
right.
do.
It's not exactly in front of the school, but
Right.
You know,
They
and I
play
don't know
in the back and the side in the morning.
supervise it. That's one of the issues.
I don't know
Well,
if it's super.
This,
my wife
if
would
they
know, I don't know.
do supervise, at least this would be the right place to do
Right,
it, because the
for the
buses are
youngest
dropping
kids.
off there,
Right,
and they
right.
just need one person to be out there.
Yeah.
Do we need full committee approval for the design change like this?
Well, we're not voting on anything. I think Carl's just pretty much telling
I know,
us
yeah.
what works efficiently, and
But when
I
we-
think we should
Okay.
all agree on it, or,
Yeah.
you know, majority.
I think we should have them.
I do think that this makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, we think so
How do you
too.
feel about
I
it?
had two questions, just
I just
a
think
little
we
off
need-
subject, but you brought it up. On those solar
Oh, yeah.
panels,
Mm-hmm.
if you mentioned cost, and I don't know where
Yep.
that will fall in. I mean, how easy is it to convert to solar panels at a later date? Is that
Very easy.
It is.
No problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
right now in the lead scoring system, you actually can get a point just for preparing for future solar panels, putting in the penetration, putting in space in the electric room for the converter and inverter, and a few things. So we would do that anyways. That's very low money, and we get a point for that.
Mhm.
We're also counting on right now doing some.
Yeah.
You know, in our original budget, we had it on the south side of the cafeteria roof.
Yep.
So in this, that we would cover it.
Okay.
And, you know, honestly, the reason I say if we can afford it is because as we go forward here and do value engineering, today, those solar panels don't have good payback. And it will probably come under scrutiny when you start pushing back,
Yep.
when we have to make hard decisions and you
I
say,
was going to
well,
ask what the
how much do
efficiency
those,
was, yeah.
you know, how much do those panels cost and what's the payback?
Yeah.
You know, if it's out there, you know, 20, 25 years, you're kind of at the end of the life of the panel, you know, and you may say, well, we might want to think about other ways to spend our money. But it's certainly something we should prepare for, and we are gonna, pursue it and keep it in the budget.
And then my other question was, you
Okay.
brought up the topic of fill, and does fill become a problem? Are you doing a lot of digging and such? Would you not be able to move dirt to where you need it, or?
Well,
The goal is always to
unfortunately-
try and balance, if you have the
Unfortunately,
material, it's
yeah,
gonna be light, though.
it's hard to balance here
Yeah.
when we go. Let me go back to.
That's always the goal, though, is trying to
Sure.
balance the site.
Because a dream of mine was that you would have enough fill
the site plan.
to dump in that existing lower part of that field, but it sounds like that
What
would be
happens?
When you have gravel like this and especially,
right.
no, you're
Stone. And,
we'll keep our fingers crossed.
What happens here is, for instance, there's a lot of cut up here
yeah.
to get these in. In fact, one of our other thoughts that we're working on right now is, right now we're going to be doing a little more geotech investigation as we move forward to find out more specifically the depth of rock and if there are any water issues. We don't think so, but in a place like this, right now we're doing about, in some places 10 feet of cut, a little bit more, 12 feet, and there's some mounds there. So we want to specifically test a few key areas, but so we'd be doing some cutting here, we're doing some filling over here, but sometimes the sequence of work doesn't allow the contractor to move the earth from one area to the other
Yeah.
at the time he needs it,
yeah.
and he ends up trucking it off-site and then bringing it back, For instance, down here is the septic system, the existing one.
Mm-hmm.
And in the schedule right now, we'll talk about schedule a little later, we had thought about, what about replacing that septic system as the very first item of work, so that the existing school can stay online? That may not be required. The contractor may be able to, create a roadway into the site that avoids that septic system and starts working on the building, and waits till that next summer when school is out to build a new septic system during the unoccupied time. And so that is, most likely the scenario. Well, that means that when they do cut in certain places, they can't put the fill down here yet because it's still the active septic field, even though it needs fill in the future.
Yeah.
And with very little area to stockpile material on site, that's where, unfortunately, it gets a little tricky to have a
truck
so-called
it out
balance.
and truck the same fill back at another time.
Well, more
Probably
likely,
not.
it
Yeah,
depends on
probably
who
not.
the site guy is.
So
They'll
you-
truck it out, sell it, use it on another project,
You
and
could.
buy some stuff.
We
You
don't
know?
have enough room to store it?
They may be, I mean, again, it's.
Behind the
what you-
existing school, you have that lower level.
No, well, we want to be careful. Remember, one of the selling points of this strategy
Kids can
was
still
be a
go.
play
was
area.
to avoid disrupting the existing
Yeah,
school.
I know.
We don't want to have any
Right.
trucks over there. We don't want to take away their play area. We don't want to take away the town's
Because a
fields.
ton of fill is needed if
But
someday
that's one
we
of
ever
the
level
thoughts
that off.
that our site guy actually had. He brought that up.
Right, what is that, like 10, 12 feet down there, right?
Yeah,
Be
You know,
awesome to level that off.
The site contractor, or site consultant rather, for us brought up that fact saying, what if we took one of these fields out of commission and allowed the contractor to stockpile material there? It would save just that scenario that we were talking about.
But you know what I mean.
So-
You have the upper field, the front of the school, and that lower part.
Yeah, here's
If
the
someday you ever were to have one huge field there, you would need a ton of fill back there. And it'd be great if we have no place to put it.
Why would
Well,
you want to level?
we're only looking for a place to
I would
stockpile
want the
it
back
during
of the school
construction.
level with the side fields. And level with the front of the school.
Why is it
Yeah.
not level? Is there a
because it was,
legitimate reason?
that
That's
was,
the way the
that actually,
contours
that
went.
was,
Yeah.
that was an area that was way down below what you see there now. The fill from the school area
Oh,
was all
brought
trucked
that
over.
up?
We brought that way up. That was down in a gully.
Oh, I
So all
see.
of
So
the-
that already is
So
fill.
the cuts that we
In
made
order
at
to
the
level that area.
Pembroke
Yeah.
actually went over into some of those areas to raise those up because you would never would have got a feel in there.
Oh.
So those have been filled. If you walk over to the back of it, you'll see that's been filled.
So we're going
That's
to
where
sort
the
of
fill
keep
from
that
the
in our
building
back
came.
pocket as we do our next cost estimate.
Yeah.
I
Talk
think
to
we
the
should,
cost
because
estimator.
that doesn't make any,
About, the.
that doesn't
the
make any sense to
cost-
me,
Which
Carl,
doesn't.
to truck it off. I mean, if we
Well-
have to sacrifice a playing field,
That's
we're
what we
going
wanna
to, I
consider,
think.
Tilly.
And in the long run, for the next 20 years, having that
That's
leveled
big
up
money.
would
No, it
would
wouldn't.
money, but if we could do it because to save us money, that'd be huge.
Well, it probably wouldn't be permanently altering these fields. In other words, you'd just be
He's gonna
using it as
take
a
it back, it's a
stockpile
resting
Oh, you
area.
so they can bring
Yeah.
it back when they
Right.
need to fill. Like right here, there's a lot of fill right there on top of the existing
Yeah.
septic field to bring it up to the grades proposed. And there's a fair amount of fill right back here in this area. So the contractor, when he cuts these areas or he makes a cut right here, and there's no immediate place to put it, is looking for a stockpile area on site perhaps.
Could I interject just
So-
real quick? One of the goals you try and have is, as we said, if you can get the site to balance, you try and balance the materials. But what you do is you want to leave enough flexibility so each one of the contractors can use their ingenuity as to how they want to move the material around. So what you would say as an example, if you're willing to give up a field, you would tell the contractor, you have the option of storing that material there. He might look at it and say, I don't want to store it there. Then I got to redo that whole field. I got to truck stuff across the site. I might break up some so you want to try and do a balancing situation, leave enough flexibility in the requirements, and you want obviously the contractor's ingenuity juices to flow to see how he wants to manage that site. One of the things Kyle also mentioned, and we had a discussion about the septic system, as to whether we should do a separate contract for that. We talked about that before. When you look to do a separate contract, you want to make sure you have this some kind of major advantage, because what we hate to see happen is splitting responsibilities. Someone else does a septic system, it's going to sit there for a long period of time. Someone's going to use it, doesn't work out. Well, now you got people pointing fingers at each other. So if you have a major advantage, like we had in North Andover when we moved 200,000 yards of dirt in an ideal time, then you obviously want to be able to do that. But in this particular case, after discussing it with Kyle and the engineers, there's an easy way to get up to the site. You can avoid that, pick it up the next summer, and do it so that there's no split responsibility.
Yeah, as we looked at it here, the septic system sits right here. Here's the teacher's parking lot. We think there's a way you could access the site and leave that so that it could still be, the new septic field could be put in the summer, but it doesn't have to be this coming summer, which would have required an early site package because the rest of the project won't be ready to go out to bid then. Or if they can productively work for the first year, then it's the second summer that they would build this. And then it would be one contractor doing all the work, taking responsibility, and managing it to the most efficient
Doesn't the board of health have
advantage.
a requirement of when you can do that and?
They have requirements, as to when to test it and things like that.
So they would be,
They'll be involved in that. We've already tested the perk rates during the right times
Right.
of year for
right,
that. And
so that's done.
that's
But
done,
as it's
that's
being
fine.
constructed, they're gonna.
Before it can come online, they have to test it too. Right. So those kinds of things we are considering, but like I said, the issue about stockpiling, the site is remarkably tight, from a contractor's point of view, because of a couple things. One, we're trying to save a lot of trees, and you can see that, there aren't, beyond the footprint of the building, there aren't huge areas of available space. There's some, in these areas, they have to set up trailers, they have storage trailers, they have to park their own cars. You got to think about that. We're not going to allow them to park anywhere but on that own site. So it gets to be pretty tight. But if they can manage it to stockpile material here, they will. We'll certainly allow them. But we don't necessarily want to clear more land just to temporarily stockpile it, cut down all the trees or something, and destroy that. So they may be able to do it here. There's some cut involved here. This is the area perhaps of most cut on the site in order to get this road up and back down again. They may wait to do that at the end after the septic field so they can move the material from here to there.
So whatever they do though, they have to put the fill into a truck regardless.
They have to move it around the site, yes. Yeah,
Right.
but it's very different moving it off-site.
I understand
Loading
that.
the
It may not even have to
properly.
go in a truck. They
Yeah.
could do it with scrapers like we did. They just use scrapers,
just
which are a
move
lot
it,
a
yeah.
lot more economical to do it that way. So it depends on the contract as to what he has for a site contract or what they have for equipment, and that'll all shake itself out in the price of the job. That's how they.
So you'll get back to us on things like that? Those are the
Yeah,
decisions
right
we'll
now,
get to.
like we said, we're not changing anything about the strategy of how we see the project. But when we do the cost estimates at the end of design development here in January, we'll be keeping those options open, just, you know, to investigate the implications of it,
Okay.
so. Yeah, with your blessing, we'll sort of pursue this layout on the site. I think it, for a lot of reasons, makes a lot of sense.
Is there anyone who has any hesitation about that? I mean, George is right, we would want to, as a committee, vote on it, but, and that's why if we have any negative comments or concerns, we should express them now, just to give Carl some direction.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it seems a fine, it seems a solution to.
And it is, I think that was really a big problem, not really having a large enough area.
Right, Carol was nervous about
kindergarten
it,
area.
you know.
Having been a
So-
preschool teacher, I know
Yeah.
that was really quite a problem. And in my eyes, you know, educationally, that would work for
Yeah.
me. But I do want Carol and the
Well,
principals
I
to.
would like a vote.
look
I
at it
mean,
too, yeah.
I don't want to see you
Sure,
working when
sure.
we don't have it
Well,
finalized.
what we can do too is get you copies of this, and you could distribute it as part of the
Yeah.
minutes to those who weren't here tonight, so they can see it.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, for purposes of the
Okay.
minutes, I'm simply indicating that the new orientation was well received by the attendees, but would still require a vote
Yep,
by the full
that sounds
committee.
good.
okay.
But I think that was a really good way of approaching what was definitely a problem.
Okay, that's what we had in terms of the design
Okay,
for tonight, so we can move on and talk about the schedule.
schedule?
Yeah.
And what I passed out was the latest update, and we had our kickoff meeting at Kyle's office back a couple of weeks ago. We talked about schedule, and we've been discussing it, and actually up until 4 o'clock today, we're going back and forth. I will point out, Kyle just mentioned, if you look down below, it says occupy new building, where it says 925. It's the fourth item from the bottom in the right-hand column.
Line 31.
Yeah, it's line 31. That's actually, that's an error. What it did was it carried the punch list period up above. You go 2 lines above it, it says 925. Well, that's the completion of various little punch list items. But if you look at the FF&E technology and the substantial completion, that actually should read like 825. So the occupancy date right now of the building would be 825, with the completion of any outstanding punch list items by 925, because the statute gives you 30 days to finish punch list items.
All right, so
So,
we're looking
yep.
at occupancy as 825.
825, yeah.
Boy, that's cutting it close, huh?
Yeah, 825. Now, if you look up above where it says substantial completion of the building, 6/1, that substantial completion date is when the building basically is substantially ready.
Ready
and
for
ready for
occupancy.
occupancy. But again, you like to get that done, even though sometimes they overlap and you're bringing furniture in when they're done. You like to get that done early so that you can take substantial completion, you have a punch list established, so you start bringing furniture in and you start, potentially nicking walls, you're not fighting about whose problem was it. You like to be able to do that once you reach substantial completion. Now, again, in a majority of cases, the substantial completion will run a little bit late, furniture starts to come in early, so you quarterback, obviously, and you orchestrate getting them done in a peaceful coexistence arrangement. But the goal would be to try and get substantial completion where the building is substantially done, and the inspectors have come through, and then you start bringing in, obviously, your furniture, your technology, and you have the summer to set it all up, and then it's ready for occupancy by the end of August.
This timetable that we're in, normal timetable? Are we rushing this too, or is this a normal kind of schedule that you would deal with in building a school?
No, this has been, from our point of view, the design, development, and construction document phases have been what we've basically anticipated this whole project. We've tried to,
comparable to other schools you've done recently.
yes,
Do them in this period of time.
this is comparable,
Okay.
right? It's not rushed, it's not, excessively condensed, nor is it, at the other end.
You don't have any
of
luxury.
being generous.
Yeah.
Pat's made sure of that. He keeps a good realism on that. But we anticipate that, from the start. That's why I say it hasn't changed a great deal from what we anticipated a normal, reasonable schedule to be on a project of this magnitude.
And again, just to run through some of the milestones, okay? If you look at, you'll see that as you look down, say at item number 15, it says 60% CD estimates, okay? And as you move up into DDs, design development submission to MSBA on February 18th. Well, again, like I said, that actually is after we reconcile the estimates, and that whole packet will go to MSBA around the 18th of February. Most of your decisions, your major design issues, your philosophical approaches, you're going to be deciding between now and the time that we finish design development. Because once you go beyond design development, it goes to MSBA, you're now getting into the construction documents. See line 11, construction documents, 120 days. Well, within that 120 days, there are two other milestones for MSBA. It is the 60% submittal. When you're 60% done with those contract documents, you're submitting to MSBA in May. And then those, you're going to do another submission of 90% in June and in July. So that you've got
A
other...
lot goes on the next few months.
So there's a lot going on in the next few months, and you want to get, you're philosophical, because once you get to that point, the engineers are going to be cutting loose on doing your actual construction documents that you're going to be building by. And you don't want to start making a lot of changes there,
Right.
because number one, it's counterproductive to the architect's effort. They'll be going crazy because now they're into the nitty-gritty. So between now and the end of January, we really need to talk about making decisions, and that's going to be the key element. Because from there, once you get through that part of it, yeah, there's going to be some tweaking. But now the professionals, and we're all going to be going, gangbusters to get the 60% in, get the estimates done, roll right into the 90%. In the meantime, you'll also notice where it says CX 60% CD review. MSBA has already assigned the commissioning agent to this job. They've already done that, which is great, because they play a role in reviewing documents as well. Many cases before they were up and running with this program, I mean, they were awarding, commissioning agents to the job. You were done with working documents. But now they've really got the system rolling. So they'll be doing reviews as well. So wherever you see CX reviews, they'll be doing reviews as well for an oversight besides us. There's another set of eyes looking at the whole thing. So again, like I said,
Reasonable to do this in 2-3 hour meetings, or are we going to need to one day have a Saturday afternoon meeting and for 6 hours and bang a whole bunch of this out?
well, what I was going to do is I passed out, Eric, a questionnaire, and this is a sampling of the kinds of things that would be put on the table to make some decisions on by the committee. And we have done it. And we've used this very successfully in the past, and Kyle has been good enough to actually, in red, is their response to some of these things. And many of these things say we got to make a decision, we need a final decision. But we've done this where the committees have let the administration handle a lot of these things because they become maintenance and administrative items for them. And then they come in and kind of overview the whole thing, and some of the major issues are done at the building committee meeting. And then we've also had situations where there's been subcommittees, and we've talked about that, where there's a serious interest of individuals with a certain expertise, whether it be in site work or other areas, where there's been a subcommittee to really go through the nitty-gritty, get into the real grass and the weeds, and really look at those things, and then bring those recommendations to the full committee. Either way, it can be equally effective. It's really based on the temperament of the committee and other interested parties as to how you want other parties involved. No question that Kyle's group is going to work very intimately with the school department, superintendent, principal, and so forth. But again, like I said, if you feel the need to have subcommittees in some of the other areas where there's been a serious interest in those things, and Kyle will suggest what he thinks would be appropriate for subcommittees that we've previously discussed. But these are the kinds of things, and I didn't pass this out tonight to even start talking about
Right,
any
just
decisions
look at it.
on this. I simply passed this out because this is simply a sampling of the things that we would want to address as we go forward, whether it's in a subcommittee or a general meeting.
The good news on a lot of these, you'll see it says needs to be confirmed.
Right.
That generally means we've already
Yeah.
made a recommendation to you, or you've made a suggestion to us that's been incorporated into the project, and we just need to confirm it as we move forward. We're not starting from scratch
Okay.
on a lot of these things.
But no one's ever going to be able to say, even in the areas where we think we've made decisions, we don't want anybody to have second thoughts later on. If anybody has any second thoughts, the next month and a half is where it's got to happen.
All right.
And whether we do it in the subcommittee forum, or whether we do it in a general forum, or leave it to the school department with a recommendation to you, either way, but these are the kind of decisions Kyle is gonna need to have made by the building committee.
So even if you
whatever
did-
resources.
You broke it up, there's 4 pages of questions that have to be decided. You know, can we bang out a full page at a meeting in 3 hours? I don't know.
No.
Probably not on some of these topics. Some of them are pretty quick topics.
Some of
I
them
think.
are.
Some of these,
Yep.
yeah,
Some
some
of
are
them
very
are.
simple, yeah,
Some
it's
of
from,
them-
yeah, some are
Absolutely.
very
You
simple.
can read before we come with our opinion and give
Yeah.
our things real quick and
Yeah.
be done.
And that's a good idea. If somebody, you want to take this and have a
page a
meeting.
day.
But
and-
so
and-
many of
And take the
these-
low-hanging fruit and go through them and say, you know, we've
Right.
made decisions on all of these,
Yeah.
and then leave what's left, and is that gonna go to a subcommittee or the full committee?
I really feel that, I'm sorry, Tilly.
Okay.
I just feel that there are many issues on here that when we make up some subcommittees, it needs to involve the staff. You know, the teachers are the
It's like
ones who
height
are
of the
dealing
fence.
with
I mean,
this.
how long are we gonna talk about the height of the fence?
Yeah.
No, I'm not talking about
Don't figure
stuff
how
like
long.
that, but when we get to things dealing with markers and lockers and
Yeah.
floors and ceilings and colors, this is their building. And I think that we
So all
need
that,
a teacher or
so
two
maybe
to
you take the
represent.
coloring and
Yeah.
all that, and subcommittee, get
Right.
those 6 or 7 questions, and subcommittee that out, because I'll be honest with you,
Well,
you
that's
can
the
ask me what
point
color
of
to make
this.
the wall, I'm just gonna look at it.
That's the point of this, you know.
I just want to interject one thing. Kyle, correct me if I'm wrong. You're not gonna have to worry about colors at this point.
No, I know.
You know, I mean, you're
Yeah.
not gonna have to worry about colors, because the colors
Take
are
the
gonna
Are
come
longest.
irrelevant.
way down the road.
Right.
Yeah, it's just to make sure you
Right.
get the material right.
Correct.
And if you're gonna paint
Yeah.
the wall, the color of that wall
Our
is
cost estimator
incidental.
doesn't care if it's green
Yeah.
or blue. on the floor.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean. I'm just throwing that out there. But I think if I'm not mistaken, what's going to happen now is, Carl, you're going to say to us, you know, by the next meeting, we will be voting on these items. So as a committee, we have to say, okay, who wants to get together ahead of time to make a presentation, you know, to make some decisions and then make a presentation at our formal
Well, it's,
committee meeting to vote on.
what you're saying is structurally sound, but when you're looking at 4 members here at the committee, and if the attendance is not good,
Right.
for
Well, that's why we're
subcommittees,
handing this out.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
That's what I worry about,
We're
you
gonna
know?
sit here and waste it, we don't have meetings to waste.
No, we don't. And that's why they gave us this, so that everyone can review it,
Yeah.
And I'm
figure
as
out
guilty
if there are
as anyone,
things
so I
that
mean, we should
you
talk.
feel very comfortable about.
As far as what you had said, the teachers or the principal, they should be here.
Yeah, we know.
You know, you put in your time at night and you work, you know, this is important to them
Yeah.
as well as the community.
Yeah, that's critical, because as I
I
said, we have a
talked to
month and a
Carol
half.
about that.
Whether we do subcommittees
Yeah.
or we do full
There's
committees,
11 of us, right?
you really,
7 have to
we
be
can't,
here.
you know, you don't want to miss a couple of weeks because you don't have a
Calendarize
quorum, you
out.
know, so I
Right.
mean, I understand
Yeah,
how
say, hey,
busy it is and how tough it is to make the meetings,
yeah,
but,
I won't make, but we gotta make sure we have a quorum.
Well, if you look on the agenda, you'll see our next 4 meetings are listed. And I think it's really important that people put them in your calendar and understand that
Right.
we need to show up for these. And also, Carl, if you think we need to add any more, which,
I was just gonna suggest, I know it's tricky, but
no,
it's a long time between December 11th and January 8th. And I know the holidays are in there, but as Pat just went through, this is a key time for us.
No,
in
I know
terms of
it is.
making decisions.
Yep.
And I'm wondering if, I just penciled in my own mind, you know, what if we met on a Thursday like December 20th? It's pretty close to the holidays, I know, but,
well, even if you had a meeting a week after December
Or-
11th, do the 8th,
December
do the 18th.
18th.
You know? Because it's
If you
that
wanna
kind
keep
of,
it on
it's that kind of
Tuesdays,
intensity,
right.
you
That's
know?
fine.
If the committee's
No,
gonna.
Michelle and I know that
Yeah.
that was going to be one of the questions to Carl.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Were these enough meetings? So you'd like to
And-
put
and
one in for the
18th then.
18th?
I think
Yeah.
the 18th, yeah, I think
Yeah,
that,
we'll
and
keep
that
it on
keeps it away
Tuesdays.
from Christmas a
Okay.
little
That's
bit, but-
fine. She and I went back and forth, and I said, I'll ask.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, do you
I mean,
want-
it might not be televised, but we'll
Yeah,
certainly be able to
do you
book
want to
it
send out an
someplace.
email telling
December
the other
18th,
board
you're
committee
talking
members
about?
how
I will.
important it is?
I
to-
will. Along with
So
the
2
added
weeks in a row,
date.
11 and 18.
So are there any decisions that, as a committee, we will be voting on? One, of course,
The
is
site.
this new
And-
design.
We're lining up our site consultants to be here December 11th.
site consultants, okay?
So
And Niche?
civil engineer, yeah, Niche, and our landscape architect, Warner Larson.
On the 11th, Colin?
On the 11th.
Oh, good, good.
That, we think
So
that's the next thing to
landscape-
be
Good, excellent, yeah.
identified.
Niche. And what will those discussions involve? Are we,
If you look on this list,
Yep.
the site
this whole first
issues,
thing,
I
okay,
mean, they'll do an overview again.
Right.
But there's some specific, and if there's some new ones, we'll get it from them.
all right,
In that regard. But remember, they still have to go through Conservation Commission and Planning Board too, so there's a whole nother set of eyes and ears and
What about
issues.
Zoning board.
We don't know that we need to go to them, George, if we're going to planning as part of site plan review.
Is Water Resource District a zoning board?
Yes, it
Special
is.
permit?
I don't know about
is.
that,
It is,
yeah?
yeah.
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'll look at the bylaws. but-
I thought it was taken care of under site plan review, but we can check
No,
that,
A special permit, a
Yeah.
water resource,
being in the water resource area.
yeah.
What is the water?
Mhm.
Is that 1,000 foot from a perennial stream?
From the brook, is
From
that
the
a
brook.
1,000
We're,
foot?
we're within that, sure, because we're within a couple hundred
Yeah.
feet. The property is, right here. This is.
That's the 100-foot buffer there.
That's a 100-foot buffer from the wetlands down there,
Yeah,
the brook itself is about the same.
I'm not sure if water resource is 300 feet or 1,000 feet. but
Yeah.
I'll check, I can check
So-
the bylaws.
So, you know, we're gonna be meeting with others in terms of site plan review, but, for the building committee, there are still some issues here, obviously. And we know that, you know, we'll try and get plans in advance, particularly for,
Rob,
Rob, who wanted to see the grading plan when it's ready or close to being ready.
Sure.
So we'll try and get him the, you know, and whoever else, but I know he wanted to see it,
Yep.
prior to that meeting.
could you send me the send all of this electronically to me, Pat, so I can share it with the committee? The-
Sure,
The
yeah,
calendar
sure,
as
yeah.
well as this?
Yeah, what I'll do is I'll fix that error, that 925,
Yes.
and show that as 825, and then show the punch list from there.
Okay, and then I'll send it to the committee with a note,
Yeah.
letting them know that the site consultants will be at our next meeting and that we need a quorum, because we will be voting on several of these issues after their presentation.
Mhm.
Yeah, and
And
again,
then,
the-
Carl, as soon as you send the site plans, we'll forward those to Rob, because I know he's gonna
Yeah.
have questions for
It'll,
them.
it'll be, not this week, probably next week, but, you know, prior to the 11th.
All right,
But right now, like I said, the key and the important dates right now are items 1 down through 8. The time up to design development submission to MSBA, that's the key, and that's the crunch part,
okay.
because that's where the decisions are gonna be made. Or the
So-
substantial number of the decisions.
The way I see it, you're just going to have to make sure you give us a heads up if we're not on top of it and say, look, you might want to put a subcommittee together to review blah, blah, blah before your next meeting. And, you know, we'll handle it that way.
What if we knock off too many of these, we take a chance on losing our points as far as leads, right?
Well, we have to keep that in mind. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, we've made certain assumptions that are built in. We do have a few extras, you know, for give and take. We know you don't get everyone you apply for and that sort of thing. And sometimes we cut some out because of value engineering, so we always have a few extras. But yeah, we have to keep that in mind as we make decisions on some of these things. Yeah.
And then costs as we go through these, like,
Mm-hmm.
you could say yes to a lot of things. Do you want corner guards on all location with drywalls? Well, in a school you would think you probably do, right?
Right.
Yes.
right.
You know, lockers, welded or knocked down. Well, you would assume you want it welded, right? Yes. As you go through these things, how do you know where you are in regards to costs?
There's estimates done at each one
Right.
of these. You see where it says, if you look at, as an example, if you look at.
At the end of January, we'll have an update on our costs.
Item number 6, design development estimates. So there'd be an estimate of about every one of these items on the job.
But I mean, as we're discussing
If we did yes
them,
to all these, we couldn't afford it. So we got to, you know, at some point there's a balance there
And then
too,
there's what
right?
they call value engineering. So as you pull these all together, and you, if assuming that, you like to think that the numbers are gonna stay within the original budget. If you
Right.
do get to a point, and it happens a lot, where everybody's putting things in and putting, What you do is you do an evaluation as to where you are, and if you happen to bump above that, then you start looking at what items can you obviously look to sacrifice, or what other more
Remember,
economical
we
ways
have,
can
we
you
have
do
a,
things?
a
So
base
it's a value
to,
engineering exercise.
we have a base to build on because we've done a schematic design estimate. So as we're discussing these things,
Yes.
we can share with you what our assumptions have been in that, estimate.
Yeah.
Granite curbs, very first one. If you were to say, oh, so we need granite curbs everywhere, we'd say, well, fine, if you really want that, but here's what was in our estimate.
But it wasn't
This
figured
much
that way,
granite
yeah.
curb,
Yeah.
this much no curb, this much,
Yeah.
we can point out. And if you really want all granite curbs, we're gonna have to make some cuts somewhere else.
Yep.
So we can share with you what we've already assumed in the
But I
project.
think what he's saying is, and what I would think is that you want to know the price of
Before we make
I'll
decisions.
make the
Well,
Right.
yeah, I mean,
each
we,
one
yeah.
before
But-
the,
but what Carl
not
is
wait
saying
for
makes
us
true.
to
I mean,
say.
we can,
What's
we
a welded
can,
locker
Yeah.
cost versus a knockdown?
we can share,
Yeah.
rough information like that at the time we're, knowing what's on the agenda each meeting, we can be prepared to share those kinds of.
So if he says to
costs.
us, when we did our value engineering, we'd said, this is the granite, so we can sit there and say, yeah, okay, but you know what, let's save a little money and pull it all out.
What's the road's width
So-
for the design?
What's the
currently?
roadway width?
Yes.
Generally 24 feet, I think, George, for two-way roads.
Here, I don't know if it's actually dimensioned, yeah, 24 feet for two-way roads. At some point, this road becomes one-way, but then, from here to here, it's actually got, one way, but cars can park along the curb, so it might be down to 20 feet, I think, there. Parking bays are typically 60 feet, wide, things like that.
How much leeway do you have a road with? Because if you cut,
Not
let's
much.
say, like 2 feet.
Not much with those.
That's a tremendous cost savings right there, right?
We've already got it down. We can, like we said, take a little harder look at some of the one-way roads and see what we can get away with. Again, in schools, our engineers will tell you that, here we do have a fair amount of parking. So even on those open house nights, but, invariably people end up parallel parking along the road. And if the road has that couple extra feet, cars can still get by. You don't have
But
a
if there's-
fire
if there's no-
emergency.
If there's areas of no curbing, then cars can
That too.
pull over
Yeah.
on a shoulder.
Yeah. And we have a fair amount of that. We're trying to avoid, we don't have curve everywhere. We're trying to, sheet the water off and collect it in green areas where we can, things like that.
And that's an LID design too, if you have
Mm-hmm.
more narrow roadways with less curbing.
Yeah. So we try to balance that, with safety and that kind of thing. But that's the kind of discussion we can have with the civil engineer at the next meeting. He can advise, what's the reasonable minimum to have to meet those different challenges.
I think we gotta, they are grouped pretty good, but we gotta pull out the ones that might go to a subcommittee, whether it's flooring or whatever. Some of these, I think teacher participation, even the gym teachers on some of these gym questions, maybe we put someone in charge to go have an hour meeting with the gym teachers after school one day or something.
Oh, we
and try
definitely
knock
want to
some
do
of these
that. I
off.
don't,
Yeah, they'll be doing that
That-
with
that's
the
somewhere in here.
administration, yes. Yeah.
if you look at this somewhere, we're going to meet,
Isn't that intimidating? It all
if you look
depends
at
on
the
how much-
last page, Eric.
11 of us sitting around this table, I guess you could debate these things for hours. But, some of them, to me, it's just a cost thing. Can we afford it? If so, it's a nice thing to have. If not, we don't have it.
So right now, everything on here is within the budget that you have given us.
Well, a lot of these are questions,
Yeah.
Tilly,
And
so that it may say,
hours.
Yeah.
what should be the extent of this?
What is schools
We,
normally have?
we
A
can
little
share
blower.
with you what's in the
Or
budget
paper
now for
towels.
We've
that.
had committees spend an hour talking about that.
Hand dryers versus
We've
towels.
had committees spend forever talking about.
Oh, yeah, hand
who does-
dryers
who
versus
does the-
towels?
Who's gonna supply
Yep.
the toilet accessories? Well, our guy that supplies the stuff, he puts them in.
He puts
But
them in for
we're nervous
free.
about that because
Those nice
we
big
wanna make sure
rolls
that
of
they
toilet
meet,
paper,
we wanna
schools
make sure
love
they
that,
meet the
'cause they don't have
handicap
to change them
provisions.
as
So that
often.
sometimes they'll say, we'll do them, but then you find out later they don't conform to
handicap.
requirements, you know?
Towels
Right.
must get the kids' hands a lot cleaner than putting in a thing, right? Because they're wiping as they're drying. At least I always
Yeah,
feel that way, right?
But then you have to make sure you always have paper towels.
Well, I know. then
And
they get
someone
thrown
has
on
to
the
put
floor,
them
you gotta have
in.
the garbage.
Then they,
And someone has to
paper
put-
towels end
keep
up in
them
the
loaded.
toilets
Right.
sometimes.
Yeah.
Now
Kids
you
who
see
wanna
how those
cause
conversations
problems.
can expand.
Oh,
you know?
yes. And then if you do paper, are you gonna do rolls or sheets?
So the subcommittee is gonna
Yeah, yeah.
present it to the full
Right?
committee, right?
That's what I think we're
And
gonna
then we're
I
gonna
think we're gonna
vote.
have to at least take a few of these blocks of, and subcommittee amount.
I mean, you know,
Come back here.
some of those decisions,
'Cause you're right, you can talk about hands versus blowers, right?
Yeah.
right, and it,
Absolutely.
and it may not affect the cost a great deal in terms of making a decision right now, but it may have functional issues that you want to study or allow the school to study, and so there are some of these that will be able
I gotta
to.
imagine if
postpone.
you're a first grader and you have to blow your hands, you're walking out with wet hands, right? They're
You
not
usually do anyway. Those blowers never seem to.
Exactly.
Well, you say that now, but
They
you know,
have new ones.
WPI has the
Dyson.
I know. I gotta tell you, I'm in an
what do
airport
they
every
call
day.
them? Oh,
I burn out when
the
airports don't
blades,
have
the air
blades.
blades.
Right.
You gotta put them
There's
in
the
those
accelerator.
But those
Yeah.
air blades are
things. If you go to a rest area on
marvelous.
the highway, they only have those air things now.
Yeah, they have them all over
Yeah.
WPI.
You know what some schools say though about that? They scare the kids. They're so noisy. Boom!
Yeah.
And the kids run out of the, first grader runs out of the room.
And Eric, the heat from those dryers sometimes helps kill off a few extra bacterias.
They're not in there long enough.
One thing I can assure you of, that whether you use paper towels or electric hand dryers, they will not be a contributing factor to a major budget problem in this job. That I can tell
Yeah,
you.
that's the thing. But see, already
But you
we're
still gotta
talking
keep
about
your
them.
topics,
Yeah.
And again, like I said,
Go on.
Yeah.
I'm reluctant to throw this out here tonight
The
because
new
again, you can get
theory-
into a
Yeah.
discussion and spend an
Well,
hour talking about.
This is what I
You've done a lot of
realized.
airports, Eric. You can tell the new theory is basically to have as much no-touch surfaces
Right.
Yes.
in toilet rooms as
Right.
possible. Starting with no doors,
Right.
no automatic water, automatic soap,
Everything's
automatic
automatic.
drying.
Right.
You don't touch anything, so you don't exchange
Yes.
germs.
Right.
You still have to get into the toilet partitions. They haven't overcome that yet. And
I'm waiting for
locking it. but-
a pedal.
You could, yeah. So
I think we need
Shame on
to.
chalkboards. Anyway.
Well, people don't use chalkboards anymore,
Well, that's a misnomer. It's, it's
marker
board.
boards.
The marker boards.
marker boards.
and you need a place to put those because let me tell you something. There's no place else to put them, and you put them in your pocket, and you get ink all over yourself.
The one thing I can do is, I have a meeting with the water superintendent and the water commissioners tomorrow night. So I can ask them about what their feeling is on irrigation and how much they charge the schools for irrigation.
Yep, that's one of our questions here because
Right.
you had asked us last time, and we were carrying
Right.
I think 25,000 to put a well in
Right.
on the existing fields.
So I mean, that becomes a cost of what he charges the schools, whether you put in a well and draw your own. Plus, it's when you draw town water, it affects our water quality because we have water quality issues in town. It also affects the cost of it drives up the cost of maintenance on the treatment plant. So I mean, there's a lot of things to look at.
There's a lead aspect to that too. If we don't irrigate fields, you get a credit for not irrigating.
So I mean,
If you do irrigate, you have to do it in a conservative way to make sure you're using the minimum amount of water most effectively.
One thing I didn't note here, and at some point we want to talk about it, probably as we move into the next phase, is whether there's any strong desire to have any proprietary items included in this project. It's a lot more difficult today with some of the recent decisions. A proprietary item is something that would put a brand on a particular material or system, and then the bidders would have to use that particular product. In Massachusetts, you have to allow 3 or equal. The reason for that is if you obviously name the product, the person that's going to supply that product may not be as tenacious when he prices this particular job. So we discourage proprietary. We'd like to see 0 proprietary items. But there are some communities that have a very strong feeling that for maintenance reasons, we've got all our buildings are a specific type of temperature
lock
control system.
sometimes,
Or
yeah.
we, and for purposes of making sure we have the same maintenance firm, we want to have the same system. You got to have something really compelling. You just can't pick and say,
MSBA doesn't like them either.
they don't like them, we
Proprietary
don't like them,
items.
nobody likes them. But again, some communities have a very compelling reason, and it can't be, I like this better than that because it's not going to fly. It won't pass the muster.
I
So,
wrote myself a note to ask Carol to ask Mike Anderson to start attending the next few meetings that
Yeah.
I think we're going to need his input
yeah.
on
And he's
these.
going to be a key when it comes to these little things
Absolutely.
we just talked about.
Right.
He can shed some light on how it affects the maintenance aspects of these schools.
Would any of you object, and I'll put it out there to the rest of the committee also, asking Carol to put it out to the schools if maybe there are a couple of teachers who would like to start attending the meetings to have some input into questions as they come up.
I think that, well, the principals.
The principals we already
Well,
know.
if
She,
the-
we
if the
You might
talked
want to
about
explain
that.
how you're gonna affect,
If the- you know,
interface
the-
with the school.
If this could be shared, through Carol to the principal, to the teachers, the principal can act as a clearinghouse sometimes in collecting
bringing-
feedback from the teachers. They don't need to come to a meeting. They can, get their
Right.
thoughts out that way. Sometimes
If
it's
the
hard.
principal's gonna come.
Yeah. Sometimes it's
Yeah.
hard, for one or two teachers to represent 20 or
Everybody.
30 of them. And usually the principal or the superintendent has a better feel for, kind of being the referee and collecting those points of view. So that's the way we like to work.
All right.
But we'll be meeting, there are issues like just with laying out the administration area that will, during the day, we'll go meet with Donna and whoever she wants to involve in laying out the principal's area. How should the office work and
Yep.
and so forth. The nurses area, it's all in the main. So we're going to be meeting with them. We're going to meet again with the kitchen staff to go over the kitchen layout. So there are layout sorts of detailed design development tasks that are going to be going on during the day that we're going to meet with the school department people.
And that's who.
And we'll bring it to you at a meeting to say, this is what, the development has been to share with you. But you'll know we'll have talked with.
So just these things like the
personnel.
gymnasium equipment, you'll take care of all that at the school?
We'll, again, if it's a decision that's like changing the budget or changing the design from what it was, we'll certainly highlight that to you. But even whatever comes out of those meetings, we'll share with you at a
Yeah.
building committee meeting after we meet with them during the day. The preference we talked about, for instance, on the gym floor, that's a pretty big decision, wood or
Yeah.
synthetic.
I think it would
We
be a good
voted
idea
on that,
to meet
right?
after school, and then you could have more of a participation.
Yeah, we gotta work
Yeah.
through the school department sometimes, some teachers don't stay after school. If
He
we're
has
doing
to
all, so-
schedule it on faculty
know,
meeting
Right,
days.
so we've been able to do it during faculty
I think
meeting
those coming
times.
up,
Yeah.
That's quite a few 3-day weeks.
Especially where
Probably
you're gonna
have
be
a
having,
couple
you're
of
gonna be
days.
shut, the school will be shut down for what, a week and a half or so during the
Mhm.
holidays, so it's gonna be a lot done before that and a lot done right after that, so it's,
And that's why I'm thinking that, not to have so many meetings rather than having them all there at one
And
meeting.
one of the things too, Carol reminds us of all the time too, we can't just meet at Pembroke. We gotta keep in
No.
mind the Pearly kindergarten, first grade
Yeah.
teachers.
Sixth grade
And go to the
teachers.
middle school
That's
and meet
right.
with the sixth grade teachers, so
Yeah.
Well,
there's
they
actually
can drive over.
three different
But they're on
groups.
different hours.
Yeah, they're on different hours.
The schools run on
and-
different
yeah.
hours, different
That's why I
times.
thought after school would be.
But one school ends an hour before the other.
What happens if,
Go have a coffee.
Yeah.
what happens if we make these decisions, maybe, especially on site, and one of the land use board says, well, we want this.
I'm sorry, Judge,
That
one of the who?
happens, that happens. Like the planning board, or
Oh, okay, yeah,
conservation
sure.
commission.
If
Yeah.
they condition and say, we'll approve it conditioned on this.
Yeah, that happens,
Yeah.
sure,
That happens, we
happens.
gotta do it, we gotta
Yeah.
make adjustments elsewhere.
yeah.
Like the widths of roadways, or what type of curbs.
Yeah.
We hear it often, from your side of the table, you're trying to push us to, make good value judgments, but, keep the cost down. But then planning board may say, well, we just got through forcing a developer to use granite curbs everywhere, we gotta make you use granite curbs then too. We can't treat ourselves differently than we treat developers. So sometimes, there's no choice. You have to do what they recommend in certain things, type of catch basins that, there might be town standards, and you can't change that, or how much pavement you can do, how much landscaping you have to introduce into paved parking lots. If, you've got a planning board that's enforcing certain guidelines and regulations on developers, they gotta do it here too to be consistent.
But I think in general, we have a really good starting point, because the way this job has been put together so far and the way it's been approved is a very reasonable, well-done educational facility. There's been no place where, there's been shortcuts taken and someone's gonna obviously look at that and say you're gonna increase the cost. I mean, it's been very well put together. There's a reasonable budget. There's nothing in there that is someone can accuse you of shortcutting something.
And you've been to,
products have been, yeah,
you've been to board meetings, so
been to
people.
board meetings, been to the, the
It's not a
various departments, so
surprise.
there's really, there shouldn't be any major issues that come up. I mean, again, like I said, it's, we're very comfortable the way it's come together.
I think that just back to the same thing is the issue is that we've been meeting twice a month. I have meetings elsewhere. He has meetings elsewhere. I mean, how can we, if the rest of them don't show up,
Yeah, no, I know.
it's
Yep,
that's
we
going
have
to
to make
hold us
sure.
up.
Well, I'll make sure my email is very detailed
If it
as to
helps,
what the
Ellie, too, people
expectations
should
are.
know that, as Pat sort of mentioned, this is the intense period of time, the next
Right.
couple months. After that, probably during construction documents, we may only need to meet every 3 weeks. So the meetings won't be as frequent, and certainly
Yeah.
during construction, we'll meet only once a month.
Right.
So it's
it's
not
really-
like
We need like a retreat.
It's
where we
just
just
been-
lock ourselves in.
we're not committing
Yeah.
5 or
people to
6
meet every
meetings.
2 weeks for the next 2 years or something,
Right.
so they can
Yeah,
understand.
but there is a holiday right in there
Well, that's
too,
the unfortunate thing, it's at a, that holiday is right
That's-
smack
sure.
between this,
Right.
the time that between now and the time we submit
You
the
got
DDs,
company parties.
And my twins are turning 21,
Oh,
so I was the one who didn't want to do it the 18th because their birthday's the 19th. So I admit it. Okay, so I won't make the cake that night.
so what was the deadline for all of this to be completed?
The end of January is when we're giving drawings to the cost estimators, so the bulk of those decisions want to be made by the end of January.
Yeah, we don't want to, I don't want to give you the misconception
Yeah.
that you can make a decision at the end of January. That's when that stuff's all going to the
Right.
estimators.
Right.
Between now and,
Each meeting
I would
we're
like to
making
think between now and the
decisions.
first week of January, these decisions can be made.
And
Because
there'll-
they got to put them on paper to get them to the estimator.
and as we've talked about, there'll be some quote-unquote decisions we made that we may have to revisit once the estimates come in. We have to
Right.
keep a few variables that we can, play with to make sure the budget stays where it needs to be. So we
Well, if I
can't
understand
commit
this
to everything.
correctly, with each meeting, you're going to say, this is what we want a decision on, and you're going to give us a list.
I'm
What I
gonna
love
let, I'm
to
gonna
see
let
is-
Kyle, because Kyle is putting this whole package together. These are the things, these are some of, there'll be many other things that you
Right.
have to decide on. And Kyle will be obviously updating some of those things. And again, like I said, since his team is working on those documents, he's gonna be able to upgrade what they're working on, what they need. But again, these are some of the things we should start thinking about
Right.
in the overall scheme of things that are
Now,
gonna
now
have to
that we
be
have
made.
the next 4 or 5 meetings, and we have this list of issues, we'll put together like agendas for each
Okay.
of those meetings,
Now,
looking down the road.
will you suggest which meetings, prior to which meetings, we should have a subcommittee meeting? All right.
Yep.
And if you have all the materials
And
out?
likewise, when we'll be meeting with the school people too, prior to those meetings.
All right.
We'll let you know.
So do we need any subcommittee meetings before our next meeting on the 11th?
Well, the site plan, I know Rob was the only one who mentioned it, but we'll get him the site plan in advance of that meeting.
I'm sure Jeff would like to
I'll
see
get on
it, yeah.
Okay.
I know we would all like to see it, but I don't know that,
So you can send it in PDF, right?
Yes.
And I will leave it up to you, Kyle, about if you want to have a smaller group together in between these meetings or something. You can't set up any subcommittees tonight because there's no quorum here.
no, and also,
You're not sure who would be willing to participate, so I
Right.
think at the next meeting, hopefully at that time, maybe you can decide on whether you want to see someone in between, and if we need a subcommittee, you can set it up at that time.
And Rob's got Thursdays at 2 of them a month,
Yeah.
so, you know,
do we have to set an agenda for subcommittee meetings?
yeah.
Okay.
If you have less than a quorum, is that okay? If
That's what I'm wondering. Say 5 people wanted to,
The
Attend
subcommittee
a
is a lot
subcommittee.
more relaxed because they're not gonna do the final vote, we will.
okay.
So
I just
they're
wanted
gonna
to make
recommend.
sure. I don't want to,
Yeah, we just double check to make sure, what
They have
doesn't
to be-
constitute a,
right.
you
So
know,
no voting
a
could
public
take place or
session,
anything.
so
It's
that you
more,
can just have a work session, yeah.
No, they have
Does
to
it-
make recommendations.
Is it feasible that we could meet at like 6:30 with a subcommittee? And then the
yes.
full building committee meet at 7:30? That same night?
Sometimes, but not everyone can get here that early.
Right. No, I understand, but.
Right,
for the
it is
general
feasibility, I mean, it
committee,
is
would be
feasible.
7:30. So that might
That
be.
might be a good idea too,
Right,
sure.
right. To
I
make
mean,
it
I think
convenient.
it's later the better, I think, if, if the full committee didn't meet till 8 o'clock
Mhm,
and the subcommittee met at 6:30 or something like that.
mhm. Yeah, that might be a more practical way to do it.
Mhm.
Okay.
Well, I'm thinking that Rob may have a lot of questions, and Jeff,
Mhm.
and George, before the next meeting, even before
Mhm.
we hear from the site consultants. Is that fair to assume?
Well, I mean, I'll look over the plans and
Yeah, and I'm thinking maybe at the next one, if we can meet, if seven's the earliest reasonable time,
it was 6:30.
or if you think we can do 6:30 with Rob. I don't know about Jeff, he's coming out of Boston.
Well, I'm thinking that,
New Hampshire, I think.
why don't I put it out there tentatively that if there's anyone who wants to meet at 6:30 with preliminary questions, you
That's
know,
11th, we're talking about, right?
Right,
yes.
December 11th.
And would you move the full committee to 7:30?
Not for that meeting, because
Because
we
you
haven't
won't get very
discussed
far
it with
in-
everybody
Yeah.
else.
Yeah.
But what I will do, right, I realize we won't, but because the site consultants are coming,
Yeah.
you know, a lot of the questions will be answered then and there.
Yeah.
So at least that would give people an opportunity. I'll just send in the email, ask if that would interest anyone. It may be, like we said, not everybody's here. It might be too soon to make that kind of decision.
That would be effective use of time if we could do that.
would.
Yeah.
And we can do that for all of these. We can
Generally, the
start
room's
our-
available, right,
Right.
at 6:30?
We could start our meetings at 7:30, because these have not been posted yet. So if we start the meetings at 7:30 and have some subcommittee
Mm-hmm.
meetings at 6:30 or 7.
Oh, well, half an hour, you're gonna give a subcommittee to
That's the
decide?
problem. By the
No,
time you
I'm
get
thinking
organized, you have
more-
20 minutes to discuss something and the group shows up.
Yeah, I think
I
we need
know.
an hour.
Yeah.
So if
I
we,
agree.
if we did a subcommittee meeting at 6:30 and posted the meetings for 7:30?
And that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I
At least
don't,
you can knock off a couple.
Michelle has already posted these. But let me see if we can change the times
change
on
them.
all of them to 7:30.
You have time to do that.
Oh,
I think
sure.
so, and then we'll just,
Nobody else is gonna use the room.
Yeah.
no, because she's already booked them,
Right.
except for the 18th. But like I said, whether that one's televised or not, it doesn't matter, we'll still go through with that one. You can consider that one a meeting.
Your next meeting is gonna be the 18th or the 11th?
11th.
11th.
The 11th. And tonight you're supposed to cover what design development.
That's what we're
Right.
talking about, right?
Right.
So, I'll change all of these to 7:30. I'll send an email to everybody else saying that starting at 6:30,
Yeah.
we'll
Anything
do a
about
little,
the middle high
we'll
school?
have a
Yeah, I'm gonna get into this
subcommittee
whole
or
I got a whole bunch
an
of
opportunity
things,
to
yeah.
come in early and start talking about the subjects. Carl, you'll send me an agenda of
Yeah.
what will be discussed at the next meeting so that people will,
Yeah, I'll
come in
try and
focused
actually
to
block
that.
out the next several meetings. Yeah.
It makes sense.
All
I mean-
right.
I mean, it saves on costs, I mean, having the site developers come out of 2 separate meetings. So.
I know, and I always do feel badly because Carl travels a great distance too. I mean, I know it's inevitable, right? It's just part of the job, but I want to make sure everyone's questions get answered before we make any votes.
Hopefully the weather will hold out for us. That's
Do we have to
another
do
thing.
snow dates?
Yeah, that's another thing.
You know, our issue is, and we probably should talk about that. If we do have,
I mean, generally for us, we're traveling, we look to the local school district. If school is out that day, we assume the building
Meetings
committee
are
meeting's not
canceled?
gonna happen that evening, unless
Okay.
we hear otherwise.
I
All
think
right.
it's a safe bet, but.
Yeah.
of course, but all of us live right here. So George doesn't cancel school very often, just so you know.
Okay by me? I got 4-wheel drive.
Okay. All right, is there anything else you want to?
Yeah, I have a whole bunch of things.
Okay, go.
Actually, I don't know if people, individuals have minutes of the last meeting, even though you can't vote on them. Does everybody have minutes?
We have them.
If you turn to page 2, under new business, I just wanted to cover some of these items.
Mm-hmm.
I was hoping Mike would be here. We'd be looking for an update on how funding is going.
Yeah, I was too.
And the other question would be how the contracts are going. We submitted contracts. I think Kyle submitted his.
Carl, did you give your contract to Mike? Because I didn't get one. I see a
I saw
copy
your
of it.
proposal someplace, yeah.
I'll check, I think Courtney actually is.
Where'd you get the
Handle
minutes
it,
from?
but-
I didn't get
I
minutes.
printed mine out. I only
Oh.
printed off one extra copy. I think he took them.
Okay.
And again, like I said, everybody's gonna be going full blast, so
Right.
early December, there's gonna be an invoice coming in, so that we need contracts executed, and you need the funding mechanism obviously in place, so.
Yeah.
You might, if you wanna check with Mike,
I
have
will.
a- I have a call
I
into
said he'd be
Mike,
here.
but again, like I said, you might wanna just double check the status of that,
I
and
will.
I'm not sure who's
And
going
also
through
to
the
see if
contracts.
he has one from Carl.
Yeah, and I dropped off our contracts at the last meeting.
I gave it to him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so whatever you need to do to get that,
Yeah.
get that resolved. I'm keeping the middle school, high school project items separate, but again, the question became relative to the building committees, whether the same building committee could sit for both the middle and the high school, and there was a note that the selectmen were gonna make some kind of a decision on that. And then if it was gonna be the same committee, you'd be adding the principals for the middle high school to that committee, and they would sit whenever you're discussing the middle high school. So someplace along the line, that would have to be decided as to how that committee is gonna be formulated.
I thought we made that decision at the last meeting.
The way I had it recorded was that the selectmen were gonna, I think the committee did, but there was gonna be a check with the selectmen
I thought Dave,
as to whether you could, whether this committee could sit for all school projects. I think it
I'll
was
ask
unanimous
Dave,
it
but I
could, but it was
thought
gonna be
he-
double checked.
okay,
I would just double check
Was
it
it
to
the
make sure.
selectman who appointed you?
yeah.
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 And that's why the committee, I think, was pretty well in tune that this committee should sit for all of the school projects. But you were gonna just double check it. The FEMA grant, I understand that's gonna go in early December, just looking for a status on that, because that's something that eventually MSBA will ask about.
Right.
So that's supposed to go in for approval in early December. We talked about establishing subcommittees, and we talked about design development, we talked about the project that's gonna go design, bid, build, no CM. Curious to note, this committee decided to go lump sum. I don't know if you followed the recent turn of events in Andover, where they went CM, they did early packages, they have a big hole in the ground, and then they suddenly decided they need $5 million more, so they have to go
Well,
back
it
to.
wasn't, the way I read it, the Conservation Commission, was appealed and delayed it for a year.
Well, but I'm saying that they made a decision to go, rather than wait for all of these things to happen and then go to bid once you had all of the approvals, they decided to do construction management at risk, which allows you to start before you have all of the pieces in place. The risk you have there is exactly what happened there. Same thing happened in Methuen when they started their project well, I shouldn't say prematurely. They started early to get a jump on it. And the risk you take in a situation like that is you don't have all of the information. So now they're going back to town meeting to look for the additional dollars, and they're not really sure how much it's gonna be, but it's
$5
gonna,
million, I heard.
sounds like it's gonna be 5, but they're not really sure. So it puts a job in a little bit of a, not to mention other technical issues, which I won't go into, but in
Isn't
this
there-
case, you won't
Oh,
have that
excuse
problem.
me,
In this case, you'll have all the pieces, you'll have a price, and when you have the price, it'll be for the whole job.
Isn't there insurance to cover that?
There is not for that, there isn't, no.
Don't we already have a price?
No, I'm saying
No,
the
from
actual
a
bid. You'll have the
contractor.
actual bid
Oh,
from the
oh, okay.
contract.
From the
Yeah,
actual
Okay.
You'll have
contract.
the actual bid.
Okay.
In their situation, they have a budget,
They have a
And
third of a price.
they
or a
started the
quarter of a
project and
price.
they have part of the price, but they don't have all the price.
Okay.
And all the price is gonna be an extra roughly 5 million. So nobody's ever thrilled about having to go back to town meeting after you got a
No,
hole in the
we
ground.
won't be.
And that's not
No
something
way.
that we recommend people
Yeah,
move
that
in
would
that
be,
direction.
that would be the right recommendation.
Think of it.
So we decided to go lump sum rather than CM at risk.
That's right. It's, which is called a
Design bid.
design
build.
bid build.
Which you feel is the right decision.
Yeah, we've already, we've talked about that, there's no disagreement. The other thing is that the scope and budget agreement that MSBA prepared has been submitted and it's been signed, that's all set. Everybody's got a copy of that. The project funding agreement was transmitted a couple of days ago to the district to be executed, along with other things that have to be done. So I was hoping Carol would be here tonight, because I wanted to just double check to make sure she had that, because they need 3 copies back within 30 days, which shouldn't be a problem. But it's just another set of items that have to be done. Plus, all of the attachments that go with it, they don't send us copies of those. They want us to get them from the district, because it,
Do you wanna give me those again? I'll follow up with Carol tomorrow.
yeah, just the project funding agreement was sent email without the attachments to us, but the full packet, 3 copies, and the attachments went to Carol, and she should be getting those. If she doesn't have them, they'll be coming in the next day or so. They have to be executed along with other directions that are in there to be transmitted back to MSBA. And I'm gonna have her run a couple of copies of the attachments for DRA and ourselves, so that we have them and we know it's in there, so we can help follow it up.
Okay.
Alright, I'll call her tomorrow.
There's also a couple of things on the middle high school. They've sent in some information looking for, I believe it's legal counsel certification, things like that, just to have a look at the requirements from MSBA on the middle high school project.
Legal counsel,
Yeah,
Certification?
yeah. And there's a few others, just have a look at that instruction letter from MSBA on the middle high school. And if she has any questions, she can give me a call and we'll help walk through that whole thing.
okay.
So there's a bunch of things that they need. Shifting over to the middle high school, just so everybody's aware, MSBA has reminded us that we've been invited now, without asking, we've been invited into the eligibility period. The eligibility period says, you're in the eligibility period, that's when you go out and get your money. Well, the town already has their money because you got it approved at town meeting. So they've moved us right into the January board meeting for approval, and the conversations we've had with MSBA and the conversations Mike had between town council, bond council, and MSBA, generally speaking, sounds like they're gonna approve amendments to our contract to do that.
Yeah.
But we said at the last meeting, it probably would be advisable to have the board vote, because I think someplace along the line, based on a
Okay.
previous conversation, MSBA said, when you get that resolved, we'll want something in writing from town
Okay.
council, which is why I had to call into Mike, saying that everything is okay with them, and that the district has approved DRA and municipal extension to do the middle high school, for which we've already submitted numbers, which have been used to get the approval at town meeting. So there's a few things that need to be put together, along with the other instructions they provided.
I'll put that on the agenda for the next meeting,
Yeah,
so that we
be a
can
good
take
idea.
an
Yeah.
official
You
vote.
need
Yeah.
word before that from Mike, right?
I'm sorry?
You need word before that, don't you?
No, we got word
We got word,
Okay.
that
Yeah.
it's okay.
yeah,
But this is just an official vote
yeah.
on our
And
behalf.
Mike had sent a memo out saying that he had talked to MSBA and so forth, and it sounded good. I had placed a call to Diane Sullivan, who I'd spoke to once before, about what they needed to move this thing along. I got a call back from Katie DeCristoforo, calling for Diane Sullivan, saying, you know, we talked to the district, and basically, we think we'll do yours as an amendment. Just as a reminder, we're gonna be going to the board in January. Make sure the instructions we sent to the superintendent get that information back to us, and
Okay.
we'll be good to go.
So will you be looking, will they be looking for a vote from school committee also?
My guess would be, it would be strictly,
town
I think the building committee would be
enough?
sufficient, yeah,
Okay.
I think the building committee vote would be sufficient, because then at that point, once that happens and it's voted there, then we can do the amendments to our contracts, get them in, and that'll get the ball rolling
All right.
there. And of course, that's one project that there's time for, because you can't do a lot of the work until
I know.
you get the kids out of there anyway, you know, so there's time to do that, so it
All right.
isn't gonna hold anything up. And it's good to know that they're on board with that. So, so there's a bunch of odds and ends that, you know, that need to get cleared up, and paperwork's gotta be shuffled around, so, we need to work closely to make sure that happens. And I'm sure they'll call and remind us, but we wanna make sure we take a proactive position. But I would say the big thing with Mike is to make sure that we're okay with the funding mechanism and get the contracts executed, because there's gonna be an awful lot of people doing a lot of work in a very condensed period of time, so we just wanna make sure that nobody gets discouraged from doing what they have to do.
I mean, this is sort of an awkward question, but shouldn't be, obviously. Is that the type of vote that we would want to take without them present?
Them meaning the,
Carl and Pat, yeah. I mean, is that the kind of thing that you do offline? Does it make any difference?
I don't think it matters.
Okay, I just want to make
I don't
sure.
even hurt their feelings.
You know,
We'll leave
I,
the room so you can.
I don't
talk about
either,
it.
but I don't want anyone to come back to us and say, you know,
Well, I would check with Mike, only because he had conversations with MSBA's legal counsel, and I'm sure he probably went to them with the question, can we have them continue? Which sounds like a
Right.
kind of vote of confidence to me, but I would check
Yeah.
with Mike on that as well, you know?
all right.
You're talking about the 25% now, right?
I'm talking about
The 80, you know, the
Our-
contract's in that 85,000 for the middle
right,
high
the
school.
contract extension to
Yeah.
keep both of them on for the middle high school project.
Yeah.
So what Pat just finished saying is MSBA wants us to have an official vote that we would like them to continue on for that project also.
Yeah, and I'm interpolating that based on what Diane Sullivan told me. Before we can comment, we need to have an official word from the district that they want you guys to continue,
Right.
you know, and
In writing,
As
I
in a
would
vote.
say, everything, should be in
It
writing.
should be
yeah.
in writing.
It should be a vote and then a memo to them, that kind of thing, you know? And
That's fine.
And then a memo from legal counsel, even though everybody's talked about it and agreed, there should be something from legal counsel saying they've checked it all out and. it-
well, we
you
got
know,
the
it
bill
stands there.
already, so.
What? I'm sorry?
I have
got
the bill.
already.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, there you go.
Nothing in writing. In writing, it might be more.
Yeah, there you go, yeah.
Signature on the check's always good in writing.
Okay. Okay, any others?
I think that's it.
That's it from us?
All right, then we'll wait to hear from you.
Mhm.
And our next meeting will be the 11th. I will make sure in the email to remind everyone their presence is really, really needed, yeah. All right, can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All approved?
Aye.
Could I get a copy of these documents you guys had tonight?
Are there any extras? Is that a set next to you? Yes. Then we're adjourned.
Okay.